Kansas State's momentum in the portal has never been better.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. I got a great guest on for you today. It's a Tillery takeover here on Locked On Kansas State. Joe Tillery joining me, and this is going to be a fantastic episode. If you don't know Joe, well, I recommend you do so. You check him out on YouTube. It's a great channel talking about the Cats. At Joe Tillery is the YouTube channel, and he's got some new stuff, JT Uncut. He's got some great stuff talking about the portal, and that's exactly what I have him on here today. But first, before I get Joey, before I even get him to say a word, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Joe, the suspense is killing me. I've been waiting all week to have this conversation with you, my friend. How is it going? And welcome on into Locked On Kansas State.
Man, it's an honor to be here. Love the work you're doing. Love the Locked On Network as well. Shout out to the fellas over there. I'm doing well, man. I appreciate you having me on. I always love talking ball and just seeing more K-State podcasts continue to grow and help out. So I'm honored to be here and I appreciate you having me.
And it's a great community to be a part of. And I know I don't have to tell you that. You are absolutely killing it. We're over here. We just started about a month in. We're already at 500 subscribers. And you, my friend, are on a path to success. You're very close to 3,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. And I feel like you said something on your social media over at Tillery_Joe on Twitter. I saw something that once you hit 3K, you got something special up your sleeve.
Yes, sir. I've been told that it's a good idea. I've been told it's also a bad idea. But at 3,000 subs, I'm going to add a cat script tattoo on the left thigh. Get that thing on the left thigh. Won't be massive where it's like down the leg. It'll just be a nice little 2-3 inch across the leg. It'll be that's the play we're going for. So we're closing. I think we're maybe 175 or so away, 170 away. So we're locking in on that one for sure.
Well, you know what to do then. If you want to be a part of, making sure that he gets that ink on his leg there, go ahead and hit subscribe on his channel. I will make sure if you're listening on YouTube here or in the audio, any form, it'll be in the show notes below. So be sure to check that out. But Joe, the reason I have you on here isn't just to talk about some tattoos, although I do think that's a good idea. Is it going to be black and white or are you going to add some color to it? What's the idea there?
Going straight black and white. I've got 2 on the thigh right now. It's the only place on my body that's tatted. It's not like crazy. They're all a couple small things that are personal. So I'm hoping to add something else. Got to rep the Cats. Black and white outline. It'll be nice.
I love it. I love it. Well, the reason I got you on here today is I want to talk portal. Portal chatter has been huge. I went on my soapbox yesterday of the basketball squad. I don't think I need to do that anymore. I think we can keep that where it's I'm not going to make you do that. You got a smile on your face, Joe. I want to keep that smile. And the way I feel we should do that is talk about the momentum of this Kansas State football team. One of the things I've been, just blaring my horn for the past, few weeks now, although they started off great in the season, they did have a rough end. They did win the Rape Bowl. That was great. But regardless of that case, Joe, they had a great National Signing Day. So far, I think the transfer portal is going good. The momentum, in my opinion, is in great strides for Coach Kleiman and the rest of his staff. And I want to talk about the portal with you. But first, do you think I'm on the right path here? Do you think the momentum is in the right ways for Kansas State heading into Dublin, heading into the new season?
Man, I really do. And I think it also started with retaining pieces like Jace Brown. Obviously, Avery Johnson, through and through Kansas State guy, wasn't going to go on the move. Retaining pieces like Dylan Edwards, Jace Brown, keeping Lincoln Cure, like we talked about at National Signing Day, like they really added the right pieces. They kept them there. Won some intense recruiting battles in the portal. For whatever reason, like nationally, it doesn't feel like the class is ranked so high. I'm throwing that out the window. These dudes are legit players, and they've added guys, whether it be from FCS level, Division II type dudes, all the way to Division I power football and some real big studs out there. But I feel like the momentum is cooking. I know there's a couple guys that, are still linked to Kansas State with some options here and there, but we'll see what happens down the stretch. But man, they're cooking. They're cooking with some gas right now.
Yeah, they have 12 people coming in from the transfer portal. In the first couple weeks, I was nervous. I don't know how you were feeling, but I was a little nervous. We were slow on the pace, and no one was coming into the portal. I was getting a little worried that, we were hearing the rumors of potentially losing Jace. We did lose Trey Spivey. We did lose Keegan Johnson on that aspects. But overall, now we have 12 players coming in. When you look at this, I think there's a good split. I feel like they've met almost every position group of need, if you will, who do you think is the most impactful? If you had to pick a name, I think we should start right off the bat. I'm going to throw you some nice fastballs today. What do you think is probably the most impactful player that will be for the Cats in 2025?
So I had to think about this one a little bit because, the idea is the most impactful person who's going to have the biggest impact of anybody on this team. And you could go 3 or 4 different directions, right? There's a couple different dudes. I don't want to toss everybody out, but one guy that my mind cannot shake because I think he's such a perfect quintessential fit for the linebacker room is Gabe Powers from Ohio State. A kid that didn't crack the rotation at Ohio State, and I know that kind of worries some people, but you think about it, Ohio State's breeding linebackers that are first-round talent, second-round talent every single year. Kid's a true sophomore at Ohio State this past season. Played a little bit in the non-con, had some highlights, had some athleticism shown up, but didn't get over some of those juniors and senior kids. But man, he's a dude that fits in perfect as a replacement for Austin Moore. And you think about the linebacker core as a whole, to take it one step further. Des Purnell into his senior season, that dude's a stud. Fundamental guy, going to make the right plays. Austin Romaine, I think, is a top 5 middle linebacker in college football. I think last year PFF had him graded. If you're a PFF guy, I'm not the biggest on PFF all the time, but I respect the work they do and the grades they do. So PFF had him graded as one of the top 1 or 2 linebackers in the Big 12. And it's just like, it is a unit that I think could absolutely change the entire momentum of that defense. I know there's some pieces in the secondary, but I think Gabe Powers, when it's all said and done, could be like an 100 tackle type dude at Kansas State.
I would love that. And he's a specimen too. What, 6'4"? I feel like he runs the 40. I heard something that was like 4'5", 40. It's absolutely insane what you've seen from his, his tangibles, if you will. I'm excited to see him on the field and hopefully he can make an impact. I'm with you. And I'm glad you brought up linebacker. And I feel like this is a good way to start. I feel like we're cooking here right off the bat, Joe, because the linebacking core, when you talk about transfer portal in the past and you talk about linebacker, the first things don't come up with, happy, sunshines and rainbows. It comes up with, we didn't have success in the past. What makes you think that a guy like Gabe Powers can change that narrative?
It's tough to say at face value, but I think talking to him, we had an interview with him over on the channel. You kind of got the vibe of like, this dude knows what he's about. He's not just playing for NIL money. He's not just playing for, okay, I want to be here 1 year, get to the league. This is a dude that truly embraces like what it means to be a Kansas State Wildcat. I know he hasn't suited up in purple yet in front of a national media, but like you see this kid, you think Kansas State. And talking to him, talking to some of his people on the back end, help with that recruitment process. Like he went out and talked to Curry Sexton over at Wildcat NIL, wanted to break down some of the film beforehand. In that process, see what their defense ran. Went out to dinner with Austin Moore, Austin Romaine. Like some of the stuff that's beyond, off the football field, I feel good about. On the football field, watching his highlight tape, the kid's 6'4", 220, like you mentioned. He's returning kicks, he's returning punts, he's playing running back in the wishbone offense, and then on defense, he's like the most unstoppable force I've seen in a long time. He's going to be a guy that I feel like hits the ground running. That being said, obviously the first game or two in the non-con, like getting a new defense, like it's a new scheme he hasn't played before, so it might take him a step or two, but I just feel like there's something there that's tough to describe. Like, there's a spark with that kid that I'm like, this dude feels like what an Austin Romaine's grown to be, what an Austin Moore became to be. But then you add the athleticism, sideline to sideline, the speed, the power. I think it's going to be tough for him to fail.
Yeah, you talk about that. You try to get these transfer guys, and obviously talking about freshmen as well. We'll see what kind of playing aspects they have, but you try to get them to get as much playing time you can in the non-conference right off the bat. But that's different this year because they're playing Iowa State right off the bat in week 0. What do you think that's going to do to some of these transfer guys? You think that's going to be a huge impact, something that we didn't expect or didn't have to worry about this past season?
I think it can be. The way I think about it right now is that I feel like it is such a springboard opportunity. We talked about momentum a little bit earlier. You're going to go out in week 0. You're the only team playing football that week against Iowa State. Both teams are going to be going crazy, having a great time, enjoying themselves in Ireland. I mean, that is the quintessential perfect start to a football season. Like, I'm a big NFL guy. It gets to the point in the offseason where, like, you've waited 5 months for football, 6 months for football. You watch the first preseason game out of necessity almost, where you're like, I need to see what it looks like to see dudes hitting each other again. With that game, you're going to have national eyes on you, like to the point where it's bigger than some of the bowl games you see, bigger than some of the, like maybe not college football playoff level, but big enough that you'll have those type of numbers that are adjacent, akin to a college football playoff game. That can springboard you so much further into the future with the program. If you go out there and you light up Iowa State's good. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But you go out there, you light it up, that offense looks good. You put a product that, like you did in the Rate Bowl where you have 40 points, you got guys running down the field, having different plays on offense and defense. It's going to show your program in a national spotlight consistently. Start the field off right, where you see an Avery Johnson ball and a Dylan Edwards ball and Jace Brown, Lincoln Cure, whatever the case is. it just feels like an opportunity where you can use that as a big momentum selling piece for the next class. For this class, I don't know how it'll affect guys of, 1 week earlier. I think the staff has a good enough feel for like, we will adjust the offseason game plan to fit. Hey, we're going to have enough time here to have our week early schedule to be when we would be ready normally. That didn't quite make sense, but you hear what I'm saying. I feel good about where they're at. I think they're going to be prepared and ready to go for that.
I'm excited for it. I really am. I feel like the momentum is just continuing on, and I don't think they're done yet. But before we get to that conversation, I want to know who is your favorite person in the portal. And I really want to talk about more as we continue on talking about the football team. There's a big question about what's going to happen to this roster with that new 105. I want to get your thoughts on that, but we're going to take a quick break right here on Locked On Kansas State. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff game is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of the past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. It has been an amazing college football playoffs. There's no doubt about that. And if you had Ohio State, Notre Dame on your bingo card, I hope you play the lottery, because I definitely did not have that. Regardless, I'm very excited for the national championship. Well, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff. It shows you the incredible deals on getting great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to find tickets for an upcoming game. Browsing through the deals was just an absolute breeze. I found out great values from all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal in particular, by the way, stood out because it was the best value of the event. I love that I could see the seats, views before buying, and the app showed me the total cost up front. This is my favorite feature. You don't have to worry about the fees, folks. You don't have to worry about having those fees that show up later on. If you are picking a $20 ticket, guess what? It's a $20 ticket. All that stuff is absolutely just included when you're picking your seat. The on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guaranteed gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKED COLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And welcome on back to Locked On Kansas State, your first. Thank you so much for making it Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Hey, for your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll's got you covered over there. There's plenty of talks about there. The squad show coming up on Thursday. Apparently, Deion Sanders might be out. He might be heading to the Dallas Cowboys. Did you hear about that, Joe? Are you surprised? You surprised about that portion?
Man, I'm a little surprised, to tell you the truth.
We'll see what happens on that portion. But regardless, check that out for your second listen of the day. I got a Tillery takeover on Locked On Kansas State today. We're breaking it down. We're talking the portal. Talked about the most impactful piece. He thinks it's Gabe Powers, the linebacking core. I hope he's right. I hope we finally get a new narrative when it comes to transfer linebackers. But next, I want to kind of shift gears, maybe make it a little more fun, if you will. But I think there's plenty to still talk about with these portal guys, 12 of them. And I think all of them are going to have some sort of impactful piece, whether it's on special teams. There's a guy like our first portal piece, Rauh. I think he is going to be an interesting piece. I wonder if he's going to be special teams or make an impact. I'm interested. I had no place where to put him when he initially joined, because I thought he was a linebacker, then became a defensive back. So I'm really interested to see where he goes. But overall, I think there's some really fun pieces for Kansas State heading into the new year. Where do you fit and where do you sit when you're talking about maybe your favorite piece? And that could be favorite because who's going to light it up on the scoreboard, or who is just like a fun character, or who's going to be a new fan favorite. Where's your mind at when you think who is your new favorite or could be your new favorite from this transfer portal class?
Well, I'm going to have to cheat and give you a 1A, 1B. That being said, I'll give you a 1A on offense, 1B on defense, so I can split it up even.
I love it. I love it.
Already talked about Gabe Powers. Think he's going to be a fan favorite, great player. My personal favorite addition of the entire class, it's got to be Marquavius Moss, the West Georgia safety, a dude that is so underrated in the transfer portal as a whole. Kid might go down as the best safety in that unit, and that's a group that added Gunnar Maldonado. That's a group that returned VJ Payne, guys that will have NFL ceilings when their career is done at Kansas State. Marquavius Moss, I've heard people describe him as a Kobe Savage 2.0 type guy. Whether you've kind of soured on that the last season or not, like, Kobe was a dude that would throw his face into the fire regardless of what's happening, whether it's in the run game, pass protection. Like, you didn't have to worry about intensity with Kobe Savage on the football field because you knew everybody was going to bring it. And if not, they'd go have a conversation with that dude. Marquavius Moss adds like a little bit of swagger, a little bit of leadership, a little bit of like, I had to grind to get here. And his tape is incredible. Guy had 4.5 sacks from the safety spot in one season. He can go out and cover, he can jump into the run game. Like, people have described him in the middle of the field as a perfect, like, quintessential jack safety. Where I gotta agree with that. I think he's a guy that can jump into the coverage. He can ball hawk sideline to sideline. His athleticism pops. I feel like he's an incredible add-on defense that will be remembered 2 years from now, a year from now, as a guy that's like, that's an incredible win by Chris Kleiman. How did more teams not get involved in this kid? How did this person not, how did the big players in the SEC or this team not jump after him? I think Marquavius Moss is going to be one that's an underrated pickup. Went to visit Nebraska, a couple other programs. So I say that, big players weren't involved. There were definitely some big players involved with Marquavius Moss's recruitment. On offense, I'm going with a dark horse here because I think a lot of people have maybe not snubbed their nose, but I think people are looking at this receiver class saying, man, what if we landed this kid or if we landed this kid? And I understand that to an extent. I think there's an addition that people are kind of just writing off a little bit. I think Jaren Bradley is going to have a big season. I know people are looking at the kid saying, okay, he's 6'5", 220. If he can get back, like it's the if question. It's the if he can do what he did in 2022. If Matt Wells can bring it back out of him. There's been a couple of clips this offseason posted. He's working with NFL trainers this offseason before getting to Kansas State. And there were some different clips of him running with different, NFL type receivers, different college guys around the league that are established vets that are like good players. Watching him run these routes, the dude's going 110%. I know it's a conditioning video, so it's like, am I justified in watching a summer conditioning video and being like, yo, we got to get this, we got a good one here.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but I tell you what, Jaren Bradley feels like a dude that's going to be a big-time target, a fan favorite, even if it's just for one season of college football. Like 6'5", 220, you needed that downfield athleticism dude where you can toss up a 50-50 ball. I mean, I still remember that play against, with Avery rushing for 5 touchdowns against Tech, back in the end zone, has the definite push-off, but, whatever. It's water under the bridge now, but I think Jaren Bradley is a guy that's getting underrated and looked at as like he's had injuries in the past, so he might not get to that spot. I think he's going to be one of Avery's favorite targets this season, and I like that receiver room, what they did this year.
I love it too. I'm right with you. Man, where to start? I love both your picks, by the way. Let's stay right with the wide receiver room, then we'll hop back to the safety because I love this conversation. I'm with you. I think this wide receiver room is, and I've gone on record, I think it's going to be better in 2025 than what we had in last season. I've talked about it in full with the volume standpoint, just losing guys like Cephas, Keegan, and Trey Spivey, and you compare them to Bradley and the other two. They're losing my mind right now, but the other two in the portal. I'm gonna have to say it. I'm gonna sound terrible on this, but
they got
Medford,
Tibbs from Purdue,
Tibbs and Medford. Thank you. My God.
You're good.
The fact that the volume, they had more receiving yards in less receptions and more touchdowns than the other three. And that's with Bradley's terrible season at Boston College. So yeah, I'm with you in a little ways, and I'm with everybody else with the whole context of if he can get back to the Texas Tech levels. There was a lot of rumors that there was injuries and illness involved with him at Boston College. So I think you're going to get at least a lot more production than you did with Boston College. But I'm right with you. I think this wide receiver group is absolutely going to be insane. I love the height. I love the size that they went after, Joe, because you're going with a new running back that's going to be speed. And then we saw in the Rate Bowl, you have Jace Brown with these jet sweeps that I hope we do 100 times. That was brilliant. And that's more speed. One thing that you were missing was size. And that's a big conversation I think we've had for quite some time now when talking about Kansas State. And then you go to this new aspect. If you're in the goal line, and this is where my mind went to, I have Dylan Edwards in the backfield. I'm probably having a hard time running inside the tackles with Dylan Edwards in the goal line stand. This is probably a tough thing. It's just not his strength. Tight ends have been a fantastic asset for Kansas State. I don't see that changing anytime soon. It's probably going to get even better if Lincoln Kira is what we think he is. But overall, I think that this wide receiver group is going to be an asset in the red zone. You'd be able to throw those passes that you want to be able to see. So I'm right with you with Bradley. I think they're going to be absolute red zone threats. How are you going to stop this Kansas State offense when they get inside the 20?
Difficulties over here.
Oh, it's all right. Welcome back.
Trying to get the do not disturb turned off.
I saw you going sideways and everything. The conversation must have been so good that you were going vertigo. That's probably what it was.
It was. Well, man, it's I'm not getting texts all day, and then the 30 minutes I sit down, I've got the do not disturb turned down now. We're good, folks. Apologies for that, but I think you're spot on, man. I think imagine the duo where you line up in a goal line package. the deep threat they added, Christian, is 6'3". I mean, that's the reality. Jace Brown's are, I mean, there's smaller guys behind him. Like, you've got the younger Lockett kid, Sterling. I blanked on his first name
Yep.
for a second, but the biggest dude in that room is now 6'5", 220. Lincoln Cure there. I expect them to use him more like a jumbo receiver in a certain setting. I don't know how ready he'll be. He's going to be a stud because he's a 5-star kid. He's, you've seen what he can do already, but I think you'll go line up in a goal line package where you have a Dylan Edwards, whoever's in the backfield, Joe Jackson, whatever the case is, and you line up your receivers with Jerron Tibbs, who's 6'3", Jaren Bradley at 6'5", Lincoln Cure at 6'6". Like, that is a crazy package where if you're a DB, I mean, what do you do there? You just hope for the best. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing in coverage of that situation. Hopefully they hand it off is what I'd say.
I'm right there with you. And for the record, I hope that they give Sterling Lockett a little bit more of love too. I thought we were going to see more in the Rape Bowl. We only saw special teams from him, but hopefully he makes a step forward this coming spring. There's going to be a lot of questions with what happens with this roster. According right now, there's about 17 players that I'm counting that are on the wide receiver room at the moment. I don't think they're going to have 17 when it's all said and done. This 105 is going to be absolutely crazy getting down to. They're going to have to cut like 20 to 25 players when it's all said and done, because I don't think they're done in the portal. I think there's going to be one or two more players, Joe. And I think this is going to be a really, it's going to be a double-edged sword. It's going to suck, but at the same time, that you're going to be able to bring in the 105 best players. There's going to be more competition than ever before heading in the spring.
Yeah, I think you're spot on about that. I know that the argument against it is it kind of kills the idea of walk-on players, which Kansas State's done incredible jobs. Ben Sinnott obviously walking on. Austin Moore. There's more to name. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Oh, man.
Parrish was a walk-on, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was as well. That's what I was trying to think of. But, the point is, like, I think Kansas State will always find a way to find the under-recruited guy, whether that's just naivety from myself or not. But, like, you think about the different dudes that have impacted from a walk-on standpoint. I know it does kill the walk-on idea in general. The thing that I really like to see, like, there's going to be guys that end up getting cut. There's going to be guys that transfer out. You're now at a point in college football where you truly have to prioritize, hey, do I want to stay with this program and risk potentially getting cut, which is kind of a crazy thing to imagine, or do you want to go somewhere to prioritize playing time? Like, I know this is a kind of a different example because he'd get picked up if for some reason he stayed at Kansas State, got cut. Taquan Roberson is a stud backup quarterback. Just committed the other day. I think it was to Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head, but played at UConn for a couple of years, comes to Kansas State for a year. Like, imagine what happens there to some of the guys that aren't as highly recruited as a Taquan Roberson. Like, the guys that are going to get cut from Kansas State, are they going to have the opportunity to go somewhere else? Because you can't necessarily walk on a different program because of that roster cap. So I think the best practice that I think people have talked about is you got to get to that number before, and you want to get it to early spring. You don't want it to be, June, July before you're making these cuts and saying, all right, we have 10 guys we have to get rid of now. Like, you can't afford to do that, especially if you're going to be active in the spring transfer portal, or if you're adding more guys like we've talked about. I think there's a couple guys out there, but it is an interesting time to talk about it. I think revenue sharing will play a certain part into some of the different things that change things up. Why that is, I don't know the exact ins and outs, but it feels like everything is hinging on a similar factor of money and time and whatever the case is. But with the rule, I like parts of it and I also dislike other parts of it. But we'll see which guys end up getting the axe. If guys, either like to transfer, if they like to stay around. It's just going to be an interesting time to be a fan of college sports.
Yeah, I completely agree. I couldn't agree more, actually. I've got a couple comments over the last couple of weeks when we've talked about portal. They want to dig into some of these positions and think about who could stay on the team, who could go, because at the moment, what I'm counting is 126 players on the roster. That means you got to cut 21. So a lot of things to be talked about here. I want to get to that safety conversation. I want to talk more about your favorite safety pick, and I still want to talk about where they should go moving forward as we finish up this show right here on Locked On Kansas State. After the holiday hustle, there is nothing like getting the home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. And that's exactly what we're looking for in the brand new year. Whether it's tidying up, cleaning up, or just wanting to give your space a new look to start 2025 the right way, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, really just new furniture in this space. I'm looking for a brand new couch, actually. And their huge selection makes it easier to find pieces that fit my style and my budget. My favorite part, well, the free and hassle-free delivery, even with larger items. That couch, it's going to be a big one. It's not going to be a love seat, folks. So Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. There is something for every style and every home, no matter your space or your budget. Wayfair makes it easier to tackle your New Year's home goals and endless inspiration for every space. And did you know that Wayfair can help you in a time crunch? Was the delivery free? Was it hassle free? Yes, it was. All that stuff, absolutely just fantastic, that Wayfair. So give your home a refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head over to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Hey, let's wrap this one up. Take over with Tillery right here on Locked On Kansas State. Joe Tillery joining me, your host, Christian Rauh. And you can find Joe on Twitter X at Tillery_Joe. And you can find his YouTube channel at Joe Tillery on YouTube.com. He's chasing 3,000. He wants to get that subscribe. So hit that button. Make sure you do so because it's absolutely great content. He kills it over there, and definitely support the Cats over there. Hey, we're only 30 days from baseball, by the way, too. You got plenty more stuff to talk about. We got lots of things to talk about with Kansas State. I don't know if you're going to be digging into that because you're going to be loaded with everything. You got a new show, JT Uncut. How's that going?
It's going good, man. I'm definitely going through the trials and tribulations of getting a new show off the ground. Even when you have you understand, even when you have 1,000 subscribers, 500 subscribers, even if it's 20 subscribers, you have the immediate audience. But it is the idea of, does all of this audience want to watch a new piece of content, a new form of content? So it's going good, and I've enjoyed kind of genuinely being uncut a little bit more, loosening up. And the questions of having fan submitted questions, I feel like everybody has their own variation of it, but it's a similar concept to what a lot of people do. I think everybody provides their own take and can kind of get different questions out of people, different comments, whatever the case is. Obviously, right now, like we talked about, a lot of tough basketball questions to be answered, but it's been an exciting thing. I got to figure out the video aspect still, but it's been a good time for sure.
And you can check that out again one more time. It'll be in the show notes, but at Joe Tillery on YouTube.com. Get him the 3K. Get him the 3K. All right. You mentioned in the last segment that your favorite player on the defensive side is going to be Marquavius Moss. And I couldn't agree with you more on how he's going to be just an absolute stud. I think he could be a jack from day one. I'm with you. I think that's an absolute case. I want to talk about the safety room real quick, though, because I thought that what they did in the portal, and you mentioned it with Gunnar Maldonado, I thought that was a huge pickup as well. In the Rate Bowl, I was really impressed with guys like Jack Fabris. I thought he did some really good plays in there, and he's going to be a sophomore this coming next season. So, and then obviously VJ Payne, as you mentioned. There was a lot of question marks trying to figure out who was the weakest spot on the defense last year. And it was hard to determine. It wasn't the linebacking core having a tough time with the defensive front, was the secondary being the biggest issues. There was definitely some questions coming up. Regardless of what you decided, do you think that position players the position groups like safety have finally been solidified, adding some of these players, and especially like a guy like Gunnar Maldonado, a leader, a former captain of the Arizona Wildcats, coming over to Manhattan? I'm really excited when I look at this safety group and seeing the names on there. I just hope it translates well on the field.
Man, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a lot of, it's easy to say that now as we sit here in spring or early winter, I guess late winter, but when you see these guys together, like Gunnar Maldonado was one that I actually got to talk to at Big 12 Media Days this past year when he was there with Arizona. Not about anything K-State related, just the quickest little intro conversation, yeah. But a buddy of mine had shirts he was working with for an agency, had one for, I think it was T-Mac, had one for Gunnar Maldonado, just got to talk to him as a person without you have such the premeditated camera answers of what questions I'm going to be asked, how am I going to respond to XYZ thing? Hey, what's the college football look like? What's this? Gunnar Maldonado was a dude that genuinely struck me as this dude is listening to every word I say. He's listening to what you're asking him. He's not just listening to oh, this question's about a new first-year head coach. How do I respond to that? Oh, this is about how college athletics has changed. He truly felt like a guy that felt like your leader. I know he's a captain at Arizona, a guy that's not bounced around, but been with 3 straight Wildcat teams. Awesome, by the way. But he feels like one that's going to hit K-State and be the voice. There's going to be Austin Romaine. He's been there. Des Purnell's been there. I think there's going to be a couple guys in that linebacker room that can contribute to that. I feel like Gunnar Maldonado is going to be the guy that calms everybody down and says, hey, this alignment, this alignment, this alignment. And I know that combination last year, Marquise Siegel had a big voice in that room. I think Keese was a good player, was a really talented player, had his lapses, but for whatever reason, the secondary as a whole, whether it be, a Keenan guard, whether it be Marquise Siegel, someone in the safety room, there was a lot of miscommunication. I don't get the impression that's going to happen with Gunnar Maldonado out there. I think you're going to get a guy that truly is like the voice of reason on that team, keeping guys lined up. And then you'll get the athleticism of VJ Payne, who's one of the quickest dudes on the team, physical, strong safety. Then you're going to get Marquavius Moss in the middle of the field, the secondary they've built around. Haven't even mentioned Amarian Fortenberry at the cornerback position. Like, they feel like a group that could truly contest for a Big 12 title and be a top 2, top 3 room in the Big 12.
And we haven't even touched the surface when discussing some of the new 26 freshmen coming on here, because there's going to be at least a few that make huge impacts. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of them were from that defensive back room out of the secondary. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But we're going to save that one for another day. There's no doubt about that. But before I let you go, I got one more question for you. Where should they go now? That's the biggest thing. Now we get 12 in the portal, 26 in the recruiting room. That means 38 new people from Kansas State at the very minimum heading into the new season. Obviously, you got other things, playing games too, other chess pieces moving, but 38 just in that alone to 105, you're already talking about over 25% of your roster, and you've never seen them pad up for the Wildcats. And you're making the assumption you're probably not going to get rid of too many freshmen, if any. You're probably not going to get rid of any of these portal guys, if any. So where do you go right now? Where is, do you think, the main focus that still needs to be addressed before we hit spring ball, Joe?
I think there's still going to be 2 more players added this portal class. Could it be 3? Potentially, sure. I think they're focused on adding another tackle. I don't know that to be certain because I don't think they're going to force a tackle. Like, they don't need another tackle. They want another tackle. There's some names that have been out there linked to the Cats. I don't want to go too crazy in depth on that, but I feel like they're looking at another tackle. I've heard they're looking at a depth linebacker just behind because of how quick they've had linebacker injuries last couple of years. And whether that's, hey, one of these talented freshman guys or redshirt freshman guys stepping up. I mean, they had the EKL player of the year in this freshman class. They've got a couple of different dudes here and there, but I feel like they're going to add 2 more guys, maybe 3 more if the right guy comes along in the portal class, and then start to address that number, get that down. So my focus would be, hey, finish off the last guy or 2 that you have on your board, see where you're at. If it doesn't work, don't bend yourself over backwards trying to get this done. Like, there's going to be people available in the spring transfer portal window, and if you can address, like, they've addressed all their needs as far as I'm concerned. A right tackle or left tackle, whichever side they opposite Brandon Snee, whichever side they want to go there. Having that done is going to be your biggest last checkboard remaining. If you do that, you can be positioned in the spring transfer portal window to say, okay, this super talented receiver hit the portal, this super talented DB hit the portal. Let's go all in on a certain kid that's going to be a big name prospect. Like, they're in a spot where they can kind of comfortably play their cards as they show up. And that's what you got to love about Kansas State.
I love it, Joe. Where can everybody find you? What you got coming up? And please do me a favor and just tell everybody where you can find all your amazing content.
Yes, sir, brother. Well, I appreciate that too. I think I'm over on YouTube, Joe Tillery. I'm over on X, Twitter at Tillery_Joe. Basically the inverse of my name regardless, so I probably should have got those 2 on the same page, but whatever. I'm just kind of hanging out, making content about the Cats. We'll see what this offseason looks like. Might be a long one with basketball, but going to try to lean into some baseball coverage as well. Like you mentioned, whether that be Kansas State, whether that be Royals, whether that be, whatever the case that comes up, it'll be a good time to talk about it for sure. But man, I got to say one more time, thank you so much for having me. It's an exciting thing to watch you grow, watch the Locked On Network as a whole grow. So I appreciate just being here, getting to talk with you. It's always enjoyable. So anytime you need me back, let me know.
Yeah, we got to make sure this isn't the last time you and I hang out, and motivate him, folks. Go ahead, leave some stuff in the comments and tell him he's got to be back on this show quite more often, because this was one of my favorite conversations we've had so far on this podcast. Please like the video. Please subscribe. This has been Locked On Kansas State.